Garoppolo under center, offset eye behind him. Here's the snap, play fake. Garoppolo has Kittle wide open left sideline to the 25, down to the 20, 15 to the 10, down to the 5, into the end zone. Touchdown, George Kittle.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
That was one of 2 touchdowns that George Kittle had last night on his way to a huge fantasy game, and more importantly, also covering his prop line in terms of receiving yards, which I may or may not have said yesterday. I did. Don't mention my Matt Prater over 1.5 field goals. It is 5 o'clock somewhere, my friends, but it is noon on Tuesday on Peacock. He's Jay Croucher. I'm Matthew Berry. Welcome into the happy hour. And what a game we had last night.
Did we? Yeah, it was okay. It was fun.
It was a great game.
If you're a 49er fan.
Yeah, if you had George Kittle, if you had Deebo Samuel, you had Christian McCaffrey,
sure.
If you had Brandon Ayuk, if you had Jimmy Garoppolo.
And Greg Dortch.
If you had the human Dortch.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins hit his over on the receptions and the receiving yards in the first half.
Yep.
Colt McCoy was Colt McCoy-ish.
It was a tough bounce back from Colt McCoy after the viral video of him entering the stadium after Jimmy Garoppolo did. You never want to follow Jimmy Garoppolo in any walk of life. And,
no.
Jimmy G, suddenly the hugely fantasy relevant Jimmy Garoppolo
The
as well.
hugely fantasy relevant. Maybe those cheerleaders were on to something.
He went off, yeah. But I think the big story football-wise is the San Francisco 49ers.
Yep.
They cover the 10 going away. They cover it by 18 points, winning 38-10. And now if we take a look at BetMGM, our friends and how they price the NFC Championship market, the Niners are now second favorite to win the NFC behind the Philadelphia Eagles, narrowly in front of the Dallas Cowboys after that massive win over the Vikings. The Vikings are 8-2 and can't even crack the top 4 in favoritism. And right now, just in terms of how the betting market rates these teams, if the Niners were to play any other team in the NFC on a neutral field, the Niners would be favored. The betting market now treats the Niners as the best team in the NFC. The reason they're not favored is because Philadelphia have a huge head start on them to get the 1 seed, which is pretty important. But the Niners, right now, 3rd best team in football, according to BetMGM.
Hey, you know what? Screw you, BetMGM. I'm going to tell you why.
Yeah,
the fact that the Commanders are at plus 4,000, you're giving us worse odds than the Giants? I get the Giants have a better record, but whatever.
Yeah, well,
come on. You see the Vikings there. We didn't lose 40-3.
No.
We didn't lose 4. Anyway, whatever.
Commanders.
Whatever. We're going to take command.
Yeah.
That's what we'll do. Let's talk fantasy football. Enough betting now. Let's get into the fantasy football aspects of this game. And I think there were a lot.
Yeah.
Let's start with George Kittle.
Sure.
I think my bold prediction on a fantasy football pregame was that he would finish the week as the number 1 tight end in fantasy. What are you going to do with Travis Kelce?
Yeah.
He finishes at tight end too. You're not upset about this. He's had at least 80 receiving yards in 3 of the last 5 games. Feels like this is the George Kittle we all drafted.
Yeah, it's the guy who's back from a couple of years ago. He was a monster last night. The thing is, he looks like George Kittle out there, and now he's getting the statistical production to back it up. I think there was definitely some concerns with how he started the season. He was banged up. Last year, outside of a couple of massive games, he wasn't really the same guy either. But yeah, locked in going forward. I mean, Travis Kelce's number 1, and then it's Kittle and Mark Andrews for number 2, and then it's a drop-off to the rest of the world.
Yeah, you know what? And my concern here is you see there, like, oh, that's a business decision right there. As you see,
Yes.
You see, like, he's not even trying to make a tackle there on George Kittle. I think the concern here is though that he is more, he's touchdown dependent. I mean, like, even in a game in which he had a 21% target share, which is his highest since week 6, he still only had 4 receptions. Now, again, he had the big long touchdown on the broken play, his first touchdown as well. As you see it there on your screen, 24.4 fantasy points. But again, he's still not getting massive volume. But almost every tight end is touchdown dependent. He's got a better shot than most, especially given the way the Niners are playing. So we like George Kittle. That's great. But I just want to point that out, that it feels like I think he's more touchdown dependent than you might think at first glance.
He's not going to get the same amount of touches because of the presence now of CMC, Deebo, Brandon Ayuk, Elijah Mitchell as well, and we'll talk about him. But I do think that right now, like, this team is ridiculous on offense with the amount of talent they have. And I just think of, like, it's not a perfect analogy, but I think of like the Kevin Durant Warriors and how spaced the floor was. This field is so spaced right now. He only might need 4 receptions a week to deliver significant fantasy value. They're out of their mind. They're the best 6-4 team I can remember.
That is factually correct there. I mean, obviously because the Commanders are 6-5. So I accept your statement. I will say that they play the Saints next week, who are really good against tight ends. So it'll be really interesting, the strength against strength here. Let's talk about Brandon Ayuk now. Boy, find somebody that looks at you the way that Jimmy Garoppolo looks at Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, particularly in the red zone, and that's all he really needs at the moment. He only has 2 receptions last night for 20 yards, but gets the 2 touchdowns. Last year, Ayuk was by far Jimmy's favorite target in the red zone, and it's the same thing this year as well. So even though he's not going to get the volume, he might be the guy who gets a little bit squeezed out by just all the monsters on this team, but he's going to get the touchdowns, and that's going to make him a starter every week. He's
now got 5 touchdowns in his last 5 weeks. Again, 2 for 20. To your point about the volume, he's another one guy that feels a little bit touchdown dependent, but prior to this past week, he'd had at least 80 receiving yards in 4 straight games. Would you rather and this is going to sound insane, but go with me for a second. Would you rather have, rest of the season, would you rather have at cost, and I'll explain what that means in a second, Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel? Meaning that, if both guys were available in a fantasy league, I think it would be easier to trade for Ayuk and quote-unquote cheaper to trade for Ayuk than it would be Deebo Samuel. So if you were trading a viable asset, and I'm making it up here, but Dameon Pierce.
Sure.
So if you're trading Dameon Pierce for Deebo Samuel, probably straight up, that's probably a reasonably fair trade, right? But would you rather that, or would you rather say Dameon Pierce for Brandon Ayuk plus a throw-in usable running back?
I think relative to perception, if there was like an ADP for right now going forward, I think Brandon Ayuk is the guy that you want. Deebo, he's just not been the same guy. It's not working with the screen game this year in San Francisco. He did get 3 carries last night for 37 of the touchdowns, so that's good if you have Deebo on your roster. But I think that Brandon Ayuk, just his touchdown equity each week might give him a higher floor relative to perception than Deebo.
9 targets last night for Deebo, 7 for 57. You mentioned the 39-yard touchdown run as well. He did get 3 carries there, so maybe hopefully we see that. We see that going forward, but it does feel a little bit like that there's it sounds insane to say there's too many mouths to feed because they all ate last night, but they're not always going to play Arizona.
Yep, I think
in Mexico, by the way, here's their upcoming schedule. Saints, Dolphins, Buccaneers, at Seattle. So, I mean, again, no one that you're like, oh, I got to bench anyone, but none of those teams are where you're like, oh, well, it's going to be as easy as it was against the Cardinals.
Yep, I think that it's becoming clearer now that Deebo Samuel's he's the guy most likely to suffer from Christian McCaffrey's arrival, just in terms of his volume. And that makes sense because his role is the one that most replicates Christian McCaffrey's in terms of, the screen passes, the occasional runs. McCaffrey's going to get that off of Deebo's plate. But let's talk about the guy who's giving these guys the ball, feeding them, the great Jimmy Garoppolo, who had a great last night from the moment where he walked in the building looking like Ryan Gosling in Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah.
And then he put up some crazy stupid stats. 4 touchdowns for Jimmy, 20 of 29, only 228 yards, but when you're getting the touchdowns, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, when you're throwing 5 yards and they're running the rest of the way, look,
it's Ryan Gosling and it's Steve Carell.
There you go. But honestly,
those New Balance sneakers on Colt McCoy?
Pretty much.
I think
pretty much. That's exactly what we're doing. Listen, Jimmy G, if you're single, holler at a guy.
Incredibly handsome man.
Literally, I'm just damn. Okay.
Very uncomfortable.
I get it.
Yes.
Don't be uncomfortable. Bask in it.
Bask in the Jimmy.
You know what? First off, I'm just going to say this because it's good for Jimmy Garoppolo. I know, but in all seriousness, all offseason, this is going to be Trey Lance's team. We want to trade you. No one wants you. We're not going to get, by the way, the Niners are going to succeed despite John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Because if it was up to them, Garoppolo wouldn't be on the team right now.
Yes, I think certainly.
And they lucked into this.
Yep, certainly with this group, with the amount of weapons they have, you don't need the variance of Trey Lance. Just what Jimmy G gives you in terms of as a passer, as a high floor guy, it's exactly what they need. And I think going forward, he doesn't even need to be that good. He just needs to throw little slant routes and screen passes, and he's going to be fantasy viable. And he's going to get a lot of touchdowns.
Yeah, by the way, he's not that good. No. Just from a pure, he's not. From a pure NFL standpoint, he's fine.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I think Derek Carr could probably be doing this in this offense, right?
I would argue Colt McCoy could have done that. I argue that if you switch those guys last night, like
Jimmy's so handsome though.
he is very handsome, but I'm just saying, like you're telling me you can't. Like, here's the thing: it's a great offensive line. They're running the ball really, really well. It's a good scheme. Shanahan's a good play caller, and so because of the versatility of Debo and Chris McCaffrey, the speed of Ayuk and Debo and CMC, Kittle being the beast that he is, and they're getting good production out of Elijah Mitchell as well. Like, it just, all you have to do is just like run the offense and not turn the ball over, and that's what Garoppolo can do. For our purposes here in fantasy football, the question is he a viable guy? Like, could you roll with Jimmy Garoppolo as your QB1 the rest of the way? I'm not there yet. I still think he's a matchup-based streamer for me, but given the weapons, and as we just mentioned, the schedule, Saints, Dolphins, Buccaneers at Seattle, like, I think he's going to be a top 15 guy for me every single week the rest of the way.
Tom Brady or Jimmy Garoppolo, fantasy-wise, rest of the way? Who are you taking? I think it's very, very close.
Yeah,
Brady will get more yards, Garoppolo more touchdowns, I think.
Probably. I'm still going to go with Brady there, but the fact that it's a conversation
Sure.
should tell you everything you need to know,
right.
and so we'll talk about that. In terms of Elijah Mitchell, since returning, he's played 38 snaps. He's gotten 27 touches. When he's in there, they're giving him the ball. In terms of Mitchell, the problem with him is that again, he's still backseat to Chris McCaffrey. He doesn't really have a lot of passing game usage here. He got more carries. He's gotten more carries than Chris McCaffrey each of the last 2 weeks. You see it there on your screen. That's basically almost 3-1 Chris McCaffrey to Elijah Mitchell in terms of offensive snaps played, but Mitchell has more rushing attempts and more rushing yards. The difference, of course, is 11-1 in terms of the receiving game for McCaffrey to Mitchell, and 106 to -1 in terms of receiving yards, CMC to Elijah Mitchell. Elijah Mitchell to me is a hope for a touchdown flex as long as CMC is healthy, but he's an important person to have on a roster, especially if you have Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, I think if you just look at the box score, it is misleading last night that Elijah Mitchell had 9 carries to CMC 7. Like, no, when the game was in balance in the first half, it was right. CMC pretty much all the time, and also he was getting 7 receptions for 67 yards too. So I think Elijah Mitchell, the good thing is if you have Elijah Mitchell, Niners are going to be blowing a lot of teams out. He's going to be getting that second half work in blowouts. But let's go to Arizona. One of the big stories of the game was the return of the human Dortch. Greg Dortch has a massive game. He goes 9 for 103. Doesn't get in the end zone, but hauls in a 47-yarder. And if Rondale Moore is going to miss some time, we'll see what happens with Marquise Brown. Maybe a little value for Greg Dortch.
Yeah, the human Dortch. Look, again, like they like this role, this kind of, these bubble screens, especially, by the way, there's rumors out there that Kyler Murray, who did not play last night, is not going to play next week against the Chargers. And then they have a bye, and then he might not return until the following week when they're home to the Patriots. So if you get another week out of Colt McCoy, again, not the strongest arm, and he likes, whether it's Rondale Moore or Greg Dortch, the human Dortch, likes those bubble screens, the behind the screens, behind the line of scrimmage stuff, the middle of the field, the slot stuff, especially given the fact that no Zach Ertz. By the way, Rondale Moore, we expected Rondale Moore to have a big game. He should have had the game that Dortch did. I had Moore as a top 15 play this week again because I thought, hey, Colt McCoy is going to be there. And you just see it here. This is something I retweeted here from Alfredo Brown at the Pretend GM. He tweeted out a direct message that somebody sent to him. Hey, other league question, I'm up by less than a point. I have Rondale Moore starting. His team is done scoring. Should I bench or start him? And Alfredo said, I know it's late, but you got to start him. More likely to have a point recalculation than have him score negative points. So, hey, go ahead and start Rondale Moore. And then what happened? Of course, as we go to the next screen here.
One carry for negative 6 yards and then gets busted.
One carry for negative 6 yards. The guy ends up losing. I tweeted out another one. Here's another bad beat from @RickAustin, who says, guy in his league needed Rondale Moore to get 2 yards for the win. Oh, that's only just literally 2 yards. Right, yes. Just 0.2 fantasy points.
Yes.
Didn't need 2 points.
No.
Needed literally 2 yards to get the win. He gets minus 0.6 yards, and he ends up losing 81.2 to 80.5.
I think this is the fantasy moment of the year.
Oh my God,
this was the Monday night
game.
This is the Brian Westbrook moment.
It's like Monday Night Miracle. I'm up by 0.7, and I'm done. My opponent has Rondale Moore.
Yes.
Help me out, right? Or even like whatever. I'm losing by 0.4, and I'm done, and my opponent has Rondale Moore.
Yeah.
The guy starts him 0.6 and takes victory out of his own hands.
I don't like to call out producer Stephen DiAugustino. Actually, I kind of do, so I'm going to do it. But in our league, we had he had Kyler Murray going up against me, and Kyler Murray was obviously in some doubt. And then yesterday morning, Colt McCoy, he's still on the waiver wire, so I picked him up, and it's always a lesson. If you have a guy, particularly in the Monday night or the Sunday night game, who is a game time decision, pick up his backup. Please, have him sitting there.
That's a mean move, and I have no issue with that. I have many issues with all of your actions, but that one I am fully on board with Jay Croucher. Exactly. Sometimes the best offense is a good defense, and he's out there on the waiver wire. I have no problem with just picking him up in session and reaction. Hey, sorry, Steven. Should have been paying attention. Don't fall asleep at the wheel.
Yep. Championship level defense. A Brooke Lopez move there. Let's get to Rotoworld.
One last thing I just want to point out about Greg Dortch, and so again, follow the news on Rondale Moore. But in 4 games this season where Rondale Moore did not play, 18% target share, over 7 receptions a game, over 75 yards a game. This offense, especially without Zach Ertz, can support, a slot. He's more of a PPR play. And again, to your point, Marquise Brown wasn't there. But still, we like the human Dortch. I think he's a viable guy.
The human Dortch. We also like Rotoworld headlines.
Sure.
Coming up now. And to start off, let's hear from Matt Eberflus on Justin Fields' injury.
Yes, let's.
Obviously, you guys know the injury report comes out Wednesday, and right now it's day-to-day. We'll see where he is on Wednesday. So we got time, and we'll see where it is and go from there.
Have you been able to rule out whether it's season ending or not?
We have not ruled that out at this point. We'll see where it is on Wednesday.
All right, I guess we'll see where it is on Wednesday.
I guess we're going to see where it is on Wednesday. It's one of these super weird things where he literally could play Sunday, or he could be out for the year.
I feel like shoulder dislocations have the highest variance of any injury. Like the other night for the Mavs, Spencer Dinwiddie, his shoulder just popped out.
Yeah.
Dislocated shoulder. He's like, I popped it back in, I'm fine. I'm going to keep playing. I think now Fields might be out for the season. I'm sure there's a medical explanation, but as we talked about yesterday, I think it's a problem that Justin Fields has played so well because now they probably feel like they've got the guy, don't need to see him the rest of the year. Maybe they just put him in cotton wool, but we'll see on Wednesday.
We'll see. Pro Football Talk reporting that Justin Fields' injury is not a dislocation. It's not on his throwing shoulder as well. There was also reported that he had hamstring tightness after the loss to the Falcons. So obviously that's concerning given how much he runs. So what I would say here is that if you have been riding Justin Fields this whole time, hope for the best. We'll see what happens on Wednesday. But as you head into your waivers tonight, make sure you have a quarterback for this week. And I would try to look. Again, we'll talk about quarterbacks coming up in a little bit here, but I would not want to risk it. Like there's enough smoke around the fire that you feel like there's a decent chance that Fields misses some times here.
Yes. Don't go into next week with Justin Fields as the only quarterback.
Correct.
Don't do a Stephen DiAugustino.
Correct.
A quarterback you might not want to pick up, though, is Zach Wilson. And let's hear from Robert Saleh on Zach Wilson.
Just been dealing with so many different things right now. I'm going to get to the tape and just evaluate everything, and I'll leave it at that. We're keeping everything on the table over the next couple of days.
So you're not committing to Zach as your starter for Sunday?
Not right now, not until I'm done evaluating everything. Everything needs to be evaluated. It's just when you put up 100 yards of offense, I don't care how good New England is, and they are good. It's unacceptable. That's not NFL football, and so everything is just being talked about. How can we be better? How can we be better as coaches? How can we call the game better? How can we game plan better? How can we execute better? How can we change practice? So yeah, the quarterback is part of a pile of stuff that's being talked about.
I gotta say, as a New York Jets fan, I love Robert Saleh. That's so good.
Sure.
Get Zach out.
Well, by the way, still had more fantasy points than Kirk Cousins or Baker Mayfield.
Okay,
I'm just
sure.
saying. I mean, just whatever. Like,
we almost had more points than those guys.
Factually correct, Jay. I feel bad for Zach. I mean, whatever. I make a ton of mom jokes, but you don't feel bad for him.
Really.
He's a young kid. What are you gonna do?
I think he'll be fine.
He's certainly rich. He's certainly rich, and the apple of many moms' eyes. What I will tell you, though, is this is fantasy relevant for this reason and this reason only, because no one's starting Zach Wilson on their team.
No.
But if they do make a switch here, and they go to, say, for example, Joe Flacco,
Garrett Wilson time.
Garrett Wilson time. Elijah Moore maybe out of the doghouse as well. Like, just suddenly it's all small sample size. But in the non-Wilson starts this year, when Zach Wilson was out, in the games in which Zach Wilson did not start this year, Jets averaged 51 pass attempts per game, over 300 passing yards per game. This year, games in which Zach Wilson has started, they're averaging just 27 pass attempts a game and 182 passing yards per game. Like, they've gone much more run heavy, much more hide the quarterback than they have with Joe Flacco, who is, a professional quarterback.
Yeah, and at least with Flacco, there's the scope where he aired it out against Cleveland in that game back in week 2. So in terms of like the betting market, like right now, Zach Wilson, of all the starting quarterbacks in the league, he's rated as the worst in terms of how he affects the line. It's not like Mike White or Joe Flacco are huge upgrades, but I think they are upgrades on Zach Wilson this year.
Yeah, I certainly think for the offensive players on the Jets that you care about, certainly you're rooting for Joe Flacco. We'll see what happens there. They play Chicago at home this week. Then they're at Minnesota, at Buffalo, and home to Detroit. So there's a couple of games in there that you feel good about. The home. Chicago doesn't really scare you defensively.
No.
Neither does Minnesota.
No.
Honestly, other than the game at Buffalo, which that'll be in December, you like their schedule, and home to Detroit as well. So we'll see how that happens.
Yep.
And I don't want to. You never root for injury.
No.
You never root for injury. And so I feel terrible about this, but we got some news about Kyle Pitts yesterday.
Yes, looks like he has a torn MCL and he's going on IR. So for fantasy purposes, I assume that just means you're cutting him everywhere in redraft leagues.
So he will not play this weekend. My question to you, Jay Croucher, is will you be able to tell?
No, yeah. Bang, there you go. That's a low blow, Matthew. That's like
it's not Kyle Pitts' fault.
He took out his MCL again.
It's not.
He's already torn
none of this. That's not a low blow at Kyle Pitts. That is a low blow at Arthur Smith. I want to be very clear where my ire is being directed. Make sure who we're assassinating.
Yeah,
1,000%. I feel terrible for Kyle Pitts. It's a bad injury. He's an insanely talented player who's been completely misused in this offense all year long. And so I feel awful for him. And we here at the happy hour, and I know I speak for everyone at NBC Sports when we say, please come back stronger. We are not celebrating your injury. We're not happy about it. We feel terrible for the young man. What I will say, though, is on a show where we're evaluating players from a fantasy football perspective, he has been a disappointment this year. And I want to be very careful about how I couch this. I am happy in this one sense. Again, I'm not rooting for a guy's injury, right?
You made that clear.
But I am happy about the fact that I no longer have to decide, do I start Kyle Pitts or not?
Yes.
Because it's been brutal every single week where you're just like, do I start him or not? I don't want to start him because the production is awful and all they do is run the ball and Mariota is brutal. But we know Kyle Pitts is so awesome and like tight end is a wasteland and like all he really needs is one play and we know the talent of the upside and am I going to just beat myself up if he's on my bench and he goes off? And like every week I have that struggle. Yep. Every week I'm not alone in that struggle. Every week Fantasy Football Nation has that struggle. And you know what? That struggle is over. Yeah. We no longer have that struggle.
Yeah,
we no longer have to make that decision.
I was going to say that it's very grim to say, but if you're a Kyle Pitts manager, it is a bit of a relief, honestly, because now you can just start Cole Kmet, start Juwan Johnson,
start anyone.
Yes, exactly.
Except somebody on the Falcons. Again, again, we are a pro Kyle Pitts show. Yeah. We love Kyle Pitts here. Arthur Smith, not so much.
Trade Kyle Pitts to Miami. Something. Give him Mike McDaniel.
Anywhere. Free Kyle Pitts.
Yeah. Trade him for Jeff Wilson. Arthur Smith probably would prefer
another
that.
running back.
Yes.
Trade him for a tackle.
All right.
You know what? There you go.
Speaking
of
running
Kyle
backs.
Pitts for a fullback.
No.
That's what you should do. Trade Kyle Pitts for a fullback.
Yeah,
that
Kyle
would make Arthur Smith happy.
All right. Let's go waiver wire running backs. Sure. Let's start off with a couple of rookies. Isiah Pacheco, Rachaad White. I mean, this is a pretty short one. They should be rostered everywhere and started everywhere.
My assumption is that both Isiah Pacheco and Rachaad White are rostered in every 12-team league, but they might be out there in some 10-team leagues. If you're in a league with a bunch of, for example, Steven D'Agostino's, where they're not really paying attention. Just a bunch of guys that, sort of show up on Monday, check, did I win or not? If you're in a league with like that.
Sorry, Steven's not a big football guy. He's not really familiar with the concept. I'm not sure
1,000%. He's a big Saudi Arabia fan. Yeah. What I will tell you is that Pacheco and Rachaad White, if they are available, and again, they're both available in just over 30% of Yahoo leagues, are priority ads. For me, I would rank them Pacheco and then White. We've seen Pacheco basically take over that Kansas City backfield. No passing game usage for Pacheco, but they are going to want to run the ball, and I think he's probably got more touchdown equity than Rachaad White.
I also just think that Leonard Fournette, the specter of him is a lot scarier than the specter of Jerick McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire at this point.
Correct.
Pending CH's health.
What I will say, though, is that if anything were to happen to Leonard Fournette, and we'll see what happens coming out of the bye, right? Because the last time we saw the Buccaneers, he took every snap, Rachaad White did, every snap of their first drive in Week 10, and he actually out-snapped Leonard Fournette 22-18 in the first half. Remember, that was the Germany game. That was the game in Germany, and there was also some issues with Leonard Fournette's passport.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that was a team discipline sort of thing on Fournette, or they just felt like White gave them more of a spark. We will see. Whatever, the fact remains is they're at Cleveland this week. We just saw it with like Devin Singletary last week. Cleveland allows the third most rushing yards per game to opposing running backs this season. They give them a ton of fantasy points to opposing running backs. So Rachaad White, who's going to make the love list this week, and the others receiving votes, I think he's a viable flex play and massive upside if anything were to happen to Fournette. Both worth watching. By the way, we should just notice, as long as I'm rambling here, Love Hate comes out tomorrow.
Sure.
It is Thanksgiving week.
Right.
Jay Croucher, I'm taking Thursday off. You're taking Thursday off.
Yes.
Stephen D'Agostino will continue to take days off. So we will not have a show, just a little housekeeping here. We will not have a show, Fantasy Football Happy Hour, not be on air Thursday or Friday.
Oh, not on
Friday? I don't think so.
I'm asking you.
I don't believe we are on Friday either. I think we're having both days off. And if it's up in the air, then I'm going to make the executive call.
Yeah, we're out.
So tomorrow's Wednesday show will sort of be the Week 12 show. And then, of course, we will get you ready Sunday morning, fantasy football pregame, me, you, and a whole cast of thousands on Peacock, 11 to 1, and then noon to 1 on CNBC. So anyway, tomorrow will be Love Hate Day.
Indeed. And what better way to segue out of that than into Latavius Murray, Broncos running back, with Melvin Gordon waived yesterday after another fumble for Gordon. We'll see what happens.
Do you remember when they wouldn't commit when Nathaniel Hackett wouldn't commit full time to Javonte Williams?
Yeah.
Because of Melvin Gordon?
Yeah, now he doesn't.
And now he's
play
committing full time to Latavius Murray.
Yeah, well, when you can commit to Latavius Murray, you've got to do it. He's available in 77% of leagues. He plays at Carolina's a weird run defense.
I'm just, for all the complaints we want to make about Arthur Smith, you sit there and look at Denver and you're like, you know what, Arthur Smith, never mind.
Arthur Smith's done a great job this year.
He really has. I mean, he's annoying. He has gotten the most out of not a lot of talent, and Atlanta has been competitive in every game. And they're,
he's a coach of the year candidate. That team's got no right to have the amount of wins they do.
He just drives us crazy in fantasy football because, for whatever reason, they used top 8 overall picks on Drake London and Kyle Pitts and did not get the ball to either of them throughout the year. It makes no sense logically, but to your point, they're winning football games. They're competitive. He's got them playing well. He's a good football coach. He just drives us crazy in the world of fantasy football. Nathaniel Hackett, I think the jury's out on all of it.
I think the jury's in. I think they delivered their decision. He's no good. It's not great.
The verdict, it's been appealed.
Yes.
It's been turned down for appeal.
Done.
It's going all the way.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
So Chase Edmonds, he's going to miss a lot of time with his high ankle sprain. Marlon Mack is back from the dead.
Marlon
Yeah,
McIntosh. Yeah,
we
like
thought
little
he was
Marlon McIntosh.
in the building, perhaps,
in the
Marlon,
building.
but apparently
yes,
he's going
you
to play for the
thought you were
Broncos.
done with Marlon Mack. You're not done with Marlon Mack.
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
and Divine Ozigbo as well, be activated from the practice squad. But it is Latavius Murray's backfield in Denver. Look, here's a guy that so far this season is a top 30 running back in fantasy points per game. He was the 12th best running back in fantasy last week, 17.2, 21 touches in Week 10, including 3 receptions. He's actually had 3 or more receptions each of the last 2 weeks, which is not something you've normally seen out of Latavius Murray. He's actually scored a touchdown in 3 of the last 4 games. And now you get the Carolina Panthers, who over the last 4 weeks allow 127 rushing yards per game, 5.2 yards per carry to opposing running backs. Again, a lot of that skewed by that Bengals game, as we've talked about here. The Panthers probably better defensively than they get credit for. I mean, they hung tough with the Ravens last week.
Yeah, they bottled up the vaunted Arthur Smith run defense as well on Thursday Night Football a couple of weeks ago too. So
run offense, yes.
Yes, run offense. Exactly.
But Latavius Murray is likely going to get the majority of the goal line work here. He's going to get, massive workload.
Yeah.
They don't want Russell Wilson throwing it.
No. Why would you want to pay $250,000. You've got a $250,000 quarterback. You got to hand off to Latavius
hand
Murray.
off to Latavius Murray.
Yeah, but he's got to be rostered everywhere and probably started everywhere until further notice.
Yeah, he's available in over 50% of Yahoo leagues. So if, assuming Pacheco and White are out, he would be my number one pick at the running back position if he is there. I prefer him to another hot pickup this week, which is Samaje Perine.
Yes, mainly because of, well, one, we'll see what happens with Joe Mixon. Two, the Tennessee run defense is the best in the league.
That's correct. And honestly, like, Samaje Perine's a nice running back, and if Joe Mixon's were out, like he'll be productive, right? He's had 11 career games where he's gotten 15 or more touches. If Mixon's out, he starts to get 15 touches. He's averaging 85.5 scrimmage yards per game, and here you see Joe Burrow just getting like, look, Samaje Perine looking so sweet in the. You know, the white unis look so sweet. This drove me crazy because this is why I got eliminated from my guillotine league. Is because Joe Burrow threw passes, 3 different passes that literally went a yard down the field, and then Samaje Perine did everything else 3 different times into the end zone. Ridiculous.
He's not very fast, Samaje.
Samaje Perine.
He gets it done.
He is not, but he's a better pass catcher than I think he probably gets credit for. He's had multiple catches in 7 out of 10 games so far this year. To your point about Tennessee, very good run defense, but they actually allow a ton of receptions to opposing running backs. So if if Mixon were out this week, there is some flex viability to Perine, especially given his passing game usage.
Yep. The evolutionary Giovanni Bernard, Samaje Perine.
But important, by the way, I mean, like if you have Joe Mixon, he's a priority ad as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Right? And so we'll see how Mixon does currently in the concussion protocol.
But Latavius Murray is the guy that you want over
I
Samaje.
just think, I just, at some point, Joe Mixon's going to come back, and that's his backfield.
Yep.
No one's coming back for Denver.
Yep, and even this week, regardless of that, you don't want Samaje against the Tennessee defense when you can get Latavius against the Carolina defense.
Correct.
Let's quickly talk about Kyren Williams, who is in a mess of a team and goes up against the Kansas City Chiefs. So probably not going to be the greatest run script in a game that the Los Angeles Rams are 14.5-point underdogs to Kansas City, but he might be the guy that you want in that backfield for the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, who knows what's going on with the quarterback situation there. It's a mess in Los Angeles, and now they play the Kansas City Chiefs. They're on the road to Kansas City. But I think this is interesting as you see it there on your screen. Kyren Williams played 35 snaps compared to 25 for Cam Akers and just 4 for Darrell Henderson. He got 7 rushing attempts. Cam Akers did get 14. But the fact of the matter is he was the only running back to get a reception. And I know just from talking with sources, they like Kyren Williams and they want to see what they have in him. Like the feels like the ship has sailed on Cam Akers. They tried to trade him at the deadline, couldn't find a taker. We'll see what happens. But feels like in the offseason, there's probably a lot of changes coming to the Rams offense, and one of them will be Cam Akers on a new team. Sort of feels that way, right? And so I know in a lost season for Los Angeles, they want to see what they have in Kyren Williams. Again, it's a bad offensive line. You're still going to have Henderson and Akers around, but if you're like sitting here going like, hey, I'm looking for a live body here. You know what I mean? I need a pulse at running back in a deeper league. Kyren Williams would be a guy that I think is sort of interesting. Especially, by the way, and he's a decent pass catcher. And you think about their upcoming schedule: Chiefs, Seattle, Raiders, Packers. So, first off, not a ton of great run defenses there.
No.
And also games in which, like Kansas City, they're going to be down and throwing. And at least as of last week, he's the quote passing down back.
Yes, for whatever that means.
Whatever that means.
Let's quickly touch on some insurance backs.
Yeah, this is important. As we head into the fantasy playoffs, I just think it's important to know, like, if you have really good running backs, if you're like, you know what, I got Dameon Pierce and Derrick Henry, I'm good. I feel really good every single week. Then all it is what you want is high upside running backs, and that's what the guys on your screen right here, Isaiah Spiller backing up Eckler, Keontae Ingram backing up James Conner, obviously. Madison is the poster boy for this, obviously behind Dalvin Cook. James Cook, we saw a lot of production out of James Cook there in Buffalo. Feels like they like him a lot. And then, of course, Deion Jackson, who's been productive when Jonathan Taylor is out. And so these guys, I think, are all priority ads if you have the starter ahead of them or if you're just looking for high upside flyers. If you don't need anyone this week, you're like, I need somebody this week, Latavius Murray, potentially Samaje Perine. But you're just like, I'm good. My running backs are good. So this is just about, like, can I get some high upside? Those are the guys that I would grab over the Latavius Murrays of the world.
Yep. Okay, we're going to go to break. When we come back,
By the way, Samaje Perine would be on that list. Like, again, if you'd had Samaje Perine last week, you wouldn't have to go to the waiver wire and hope you get him if you have Mixon, which is why it's important to get the guys we just mentioned, the Ingrams, the Cooks, the Madisons of the world.
We've hit the over on Samaje Perine. The prop on BetMGM, we've gone way over. That's
how
a
many
cash.
times we're going to mention him?
All right, when we come back.
This is a pro Samaje Perine podcast.
Yeah, wide receivers, headlined by Treylon Burks.
I've heard of him.
Juwan Johnson sees a lot of garbage time targets, but I believe he's 6th in tight end routes over the past 4 weeks, over the past month. Okay, it's not a fluke. He's out there running a lot of routes. That's what we're looking for with a streaming tight end. Oh, just traded Taylor for Kupp. Really? Straight up? Somebody traded you Cooper Kupp for Taylor? Man, that's tough luck. I think we all want. I'm gonna give you a hug if that's okay. That's tough.
All right, that's Denny Carter.
That's Denny Carter, the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. Go ahead, read the promo there. If we would like a virtual hug from a man in a suit jacket, Denny Carter's your guy.
Yes, feels like he's about to teach English literature class or something, or tell you about picking up Juwan Johnson. But head to our YouTube channel, the NFL on NBC YouTube channel, and Denny Carter will give you live advice.
Yes, he is. He'll be live at 1 o'clock. He will talk to you. He also feels it's a little bit like you see the commercials about the not being your parent.
Yeah.
He's a little Dr. Rick there.
Okay, yeah,
got a little Dr. Rick.
That's not a bad call.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about Stephen D'Agostino previously and his decision to not pick up Colt McCoy despite having Kyler Murray as his starter. This is actually footage of Stephen walking into today's show.
Right.
And Stephen, before you get upset, I'd just like to tell you, all you've got to do is look at the man in the mirror, because that's the only man you've got to blame for not picking up Colt McCoy.
Did you end up winning?
I did.
There you go.
Because I picked up Colt McCoy. And I had Christian McCaffrey.
That also helps. Those two things help. Yeah.
All right, let's jump into waiver wide receivers.
By the way, remember I keep my guillotine team from yesterday? I was called.
Yeah.
Also, I forgot. I was out of the whole rant. I forgot to mention. I also had Cooper Kupp on that team, who I'd lost the week before.
Oh, right. Yeah, he's good.
So no Cooper Kupp.
Cooper Kupp.
That's like
shrinking in size by the day. All right, let's start with Treylon Burks.
Yes, I've heard of him.
Looked a little bit like Cooper Kupp on Thursday night against Green Bay, where he went off, roasted Jair Alexander, and now he gets a pretty banged-up Cincinnati secondary.
Since he's come back, he's had a 22% target share. We knew somebody would emerge from Tennessee. We hoped it would Treylon Burks. First-round draft pick, had a tough offseason. Then he gets hurt, and you're just not sure. But having Ryan Tannehill back under center, who's willing to pass, unlike Malik Willis, and the fact that Burks is. There's a reason why he was a first-round pick. I mean, this is a talented guy, and so now Treylon Burks in the number one role for Tennessee. You like the matchup here with the Bengals, as Cincinnati's allowed at least one touchdown to a wide receiver in 5 straight games. They're giving up over 17 yards per reception to wide receivers over the last 3 games as well. And so Burks, who was a top 12 wide receiver last week, should be somebody who's a priority on the waiver wire. He's available in 80% of Yahoo leagues. We've talked about him a few times as, hey, this is a guy we like. This is a guy you should grab and stash. No one listens to us, so he's still out there in 80% of leagues.
Yep, they are loading the box against Tennessee like I've not seen before. And when it was Malik Willis, we're just going to run Derrick Henry over and over again. The past 2 weeks, though, much more of a passing game in Tennessee. Treylon Burks is the main beneficiary.
And just remember, we've seen it with A.J. Brown. We've seen this offense. We've seen Ryan Tannehill support an elite fantasy wide receiver.
Sure, Ryan Tannehill's good. Let's talk Darius Slayton, who plays at the Cowboys on Thanksgiving. Wan'Dale Robinson, unfortunately, is out for the season with a torn ACL. Terrible news there. But
we loved Wan'Dale Robinson all season long, and he last week comes into his own. And you're like, yes, that's the Wan'Dale we've been talking about. And then just a brutal injury. Get better soon, Wan'Dale. We're all rooting for you as well. But it is worth noting that Darius Slayton, over the last 4 weeks, also a 22% target share. You're sitting here seeing on your screen what he's done over the last 6 weeks. Been pretty productive, other than that Week 6 game against the Ravens. Okay, whatever. A lot of people struggle against the Ravens, but over the last 4 weeks, he's averaging 14.6 fantasy points per game, and now he's got a schedule that I think the Giants are going to have to throw. I mean, they play Dallas this week, Washington, Philadelphia, then at Washington again. Darius Slayton, who's a big play waiting to happen and has had a connection with Daniel Jones before in his past.
Yep.
So we like Darius Slayton. Talented young guy.
I'm pretty worried about Saquon Barkley the rest of the way, at least relative to perception, because of all those defenses that he's playing. Dallas, 2 games against the Commanders, who Damian Pierce could do nothing against. There's a Colts game there. And then Philadelphia. Now they've got Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh. That's much tougher.
Are you recommending sell high on Saquon Barkley, Jay
Well,
Patrick?
it's kind of hard to sell high on him after he had, 15 carries for 22 yards?
He's still Saquon Barkley, though. I still think you could get a top 10 player for Saquon Barkley. Running back is so awful, and he's been so good for much of the year.
Yep.
I think that's interesting. I'm not trying to sell him just to sell him, but I agree with you. Like, his peak is probably at its peak.
Yes, he's peaked. I think it's mostly down from here. I think that
he's still a top 10 running back, but is he a top 3 guy? Probably not. He's probably more in the 7 to 9 range.
I think there's a good chance that guys like Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor on a per game basis might outproduce him the rest of the way. It's definitely very much in play.
Eckler, CMC, on and on.
Henry,
Look, I still, he's involved enough in the passing game. He's such a focal point that, Detroit game notwithstanding. My expectation here is he's going to be fine.
Yes.
Again, I'm not trying to actively shop him, but if somebody were willing to, give me a pretty good haul for him, I would certainly consider it giving the upcoming schedule.
Speaking of pretty good, Donovan Peoples-Jones,
Yeah.
who just continues to cook. He's kind of been the seminal waiver wire pickup guy for this show, where he's just in this slot every single week, and he should just be rostered everywhere, and you can start him as basically a mid-tier flex at this point.
He's a viable wide receiver 3. He's had at least 11 fantasy points in each of the last 7 games except for one.
That consistency.
You see it there on your screen. He's averaging 72 yards per game over the last 7, which is 11th best among wide receivers. He's actually a top 30 wide receiver fantasy points per game since week 4, as you see it there on your screen, starting with that Falcons game where he went 5 for 71 at Atlanta in week 4. So Donovan Peoples-Jones, who has a connection with Jacoby Brissett, and oh, by the way, this is the last week of Jacoby Brissett. We'll talk about Watson in a little bit, but he's a week away from getting Deshaun Watson as quarterback, which we'll see if that's actually an upgrade or not. Watson hasn't played in a while, but we do know that Watson does like to throw deep, and so Peoples-Jones has some speed, and they like to set up play action. And he's been a nice compliment to Amari Cooper. He's available in 55% of I was going to say ESPN leagues. Probably is, but whatever, I'm used to it. Yahoo leagues. I only said that for 15 years, so it is what it is.
Also, that Cleveland defense, I don't really understand it, but it's terrible, and they're going to be in a lot more shootouts, so they're going to be throwing a lot the rest of the way. Let's talk Paris Campbell, the rejuvenated Renaissance man.
Yeah,
Paris
one
Campbell.
night in Paris.
Yeah, he's, again, just continues to produce 5 for 67 against Philadelphia. Not his best game, but still producing viable fantasy outputs, 60% available.
Yeah, and as long as Matt Ryan is the quarterback of the Colts, Paris Campbell's going to be viable. Like, he likes throwing to the slot, which, by the way, that's an area where Pittsburgh is really vulnerable. They allow the second most yards per game to the slot. Paris Campbell, in all 4 games that he's played with Matt Ryan, the last 4 games he's played with Matt Ryan, he's averaging 18.5 fantasy points per game, almost a 25% target share. You see him there on your screen, the last 4 games with Matt Ryan. He's been, they have a connection there. If they go back to Sam Ehlinger, we're screwed here. But as long as Matt Ryan is the guy, Paris Campbell is very viable.
Yep, no, I agree with that. And I wouldn't be worried too much about just having the 6 targets, because Indy was leading that game the entire way until they weren't. So they were able to run Jonathan Taylor 22 times. Okay, so these 4 guys, these are the 4 big-name wide receiver pickups. Burks, Slayton, DPJ, Paris Campbell. Who do you most want the rest of the season?
How about Demarcus Robinson, who in Week 11 played 79% of the snaps, a 28% target share. In 2 of the last 3, he's had at least 8 targets, at least 12 fantasy points. And so Demarcus Robinson, who's a talented wide receiver, with Rashad Bateman out there looking for somebody to step up. And even though Devin Duvernay has gotten some of the touchdowns and some of the flashier plays, in terms of snaps played, in terms of routes run, it's actually Demarcus Robinson who's the guy that you want there. So I think he's kind of interesting, especially given the fact they play the Jaguars this week. You see some other names there on your screen. Sky Moore, we don't know about the health of Juju Smith-Schuster or Kadarius Toney. Jameson Williams, we've talked about, we expect him back after the Lions bye. Of course, they play on Thanksgiving, then they'll have a bye, but Jameson Williams is kind of an interesting stash as he was designated to return from IR yesterday. And then finally, Nico Collins, with 17 targets over the last 2 games. I don't know what's going on in Houston, but it feels, Brandon Cooks has fallen out of favor. There's talk of maybe a quarterback switch there. Ooh, Davis Mills for Zach Wilson. Who says no?
No, that's a sad question. I think because of the pedigree.
Who says no?
Yeah, America says no. America says no. The Milky Way galaxy says no
to
that one. So
fair enough.
I think
Mobs
I
of
probably
Houston say
yeah,
no.
the mobs of Houston. They might say yes.
They might say yes.
Emphatically yes.
Right.
In fact.
Exactly. The mobs of New Jersey say no.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, of all the names we've talked about in this segment, who do you most want the rest of the season? Is it Treylon Burks?
Oh, Treylon Burks. Yeah. I thought for the rest of the season, the guy I want the most is Treylon Burks. He's got the most upside.
Yep.
He has the potential to be A.J. Brown down the stretch, like a top 15 fantasy wide receiver. Like he's got that skill set and that potential role. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we always talk about this in fantasy football. Success comes from 2 things and 2 things only: talent and opportunity. We know about Burks' talent, and now he's got the opportunities, fully healthy, and he is the guy in that passing game for the Tennessee Titans.
Yep, I agree. Burks is the guy. All right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, Waiver Wire tight ends, and also we make Matthew Berry relive one of his worst moments, or the worst moment of his fantasy season.
Really?
Yeah, it's
okay.
going to be your guillotine league.
A lot of ones to pick from. Most of the show is about you guys, okay? Most of the show is me pouring out my heart, pouring out my brain for you at home. This one's about me and me only. And so in a guillotine league, if you're the lowest scoring team in the league, you get chopped. Michael Pittman, like it's a Josh Allen. It's a great team.
Not anymore.
No, not anymore, Jay Croucher. You know why? Because everyone that I just mentioned didn't score a touchdown.
Yeah.
God forbid Josh Allen throw more than 1 touchdown pass. God forbid Saquon Barkley gets more than 30 yards against the Lions. The Lions, Saquon Barkley.
5 minutes later.
Quez Watkins? Why are we throwing it to Quez Watkins?
It's good, Quez.
A.J. Brown is there. You understand how hard it is to have 7 legitimate offensive stars that score only 1 touchdown over the course of a day? You know how hard it is? Well, I did it. That felt good to get out.
Yeah, you happy?
No, I'm not happy. I didn't even mention the fact that, again, I didn't have Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
I should have had Cooper Kupp, who's great in guillotine because he's got such a high floor. I mean, he's great in all forms of fantasy, but especially in guillotine. And I lost him the week before. And the way guillotine leagues work is that you have a bunch of fab money, and that every week that you lose, the team that finishes in last and gets chopped, all of your players go into the free agent pool,
sure.
And so you can bid on them. So I'd spent all my money to get Cooper Kupp, so it's not like I could have gone to the waiver wire prior to this week because I'd spent it all on Cooper Kupp. But you know what? It didn't matter because my team was awesome, as you just heard. Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, Josh Allen, all these guys,
sure.
All these high floor guys, Saquon.
All right. You got it out of your system?
No, so bitter. I'm the bitter Barry.
All right. All your points are noted. Let's
Fine.
talk waiver wired
So
tight
angry.
ends.
I sent that little video. We have a group chat of all the guys that I'm in the guillotine league,
Yeah.
and they all just laugh. They all a bunch of laugh emojis.
It's a great team. Now it's no more.
It was
Yes.
past tense.
Present tense is Juwan Johnson.
By the way, look at this camera angle. I mean, look, it looks like I have a peacock coming out of my head. Just look at that.
You kind of do. I reckon we keep it.
It's like it's a little bit of a crown. It's like my
angle.
bald head up into a peacock.
Kind of terrifying
like I've got
when
kind
you
of
phrase it like that.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's been the next promo.
Yeah, you know what this is? You know what this is? This is a nominee for
the best
a
peacocky.
peacocky.
Yeah.
This is a
Best
peacocky
cinematography.
nominee. Best cinematography, exactly.
Yeah.
Is my
Maybe
bald
that's-
head right up into a
Maybe
peacock
that's
butt.
the trophy, the most terrifying trophy in the history of trophies. Matthew
Yeah,
Berry's head with a
1000%.
peacock coming out of it.
Meme this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So Juwan Johnson,
Sure.
who just keeps he's allergic to
transition,
not
by the way.
allergic
Nice
to not
job.
scoring touchdowns. Juwan Johnson, he gets the peacocky for surprise tight end who just keeps on producing. Tough matchup against San Francisco, who are very good full stop, but very good against tight ends as well, at least in terms of their efficiency. But maybe the Saints will be throwing, and I think Juwan Johnson's a viable flex.
Yeah, I mean, look, he's scored in 4 of the past 5 games. He's finished as the top 10 tight end in 4 of the past 5 weeks. It appears that the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, has a connection with Juwan Johnson. Look, when you're getting down to the waiver wire with tight ends, you're just hoping for a guy that scores, and he has been scoring quite a bit. If Juwan Johnson's not there, how about Logan Thomas? Been a couple weeks.
Is that Logan Thomas's music?
That is Logan Thomas' music. It's been a couple weeks since we've talked about him.
Yeah.
Remember, they play the Falcons this week, and Atlanta allows the 3rd most receptions to opposing tight ends. 26% target share from Taylor Heineke last week for Logan Thomas. Finally fully healthy. He's available in 86% of leagues. You know I love me some Logan Thomas.
You do. Happy hour mascot, Logan Thomas. It's Marlon McIntosh and it's Logan Thomas. All right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, quarterbacks on the waiver wire that you can pick up. If any mums are watching, we're not going to be talking Zach Wilson, so you can skip ahead.
Right. They know they can pick him up.
Yeah, there you go. Good one.
Got a bone to pick with you.
Oh, here we go. Come on.
You know, mac and cheese is a staple of the holiday feast.
It's disgusting. It's probably terrible for your stomach. It's just cheese, noodles, and milk. And everybody else like, no, you gotta have my mama, you gotta have my, I don't want it.
But you went so hard at it. You didn't just say, hey, it's not for me. You said it was overrated.
It is.
That's such an awful take.
Well, Matthew Judon, who has 13 sacks on the season, on pace to flirt with the sack record, just sacked mac and cheese in that segment with Michael Smith. You on board with that take?
I am not. Look, I'm not a mac and cheese guy, but I will tell you. But I will very aggressive because I'll tell you something. Like I have twin daughters that are 11, and you know what they are? Hungry a lot of the time.
Sure.
And you know what else they have? As a dad who can't cook.
Yeah.
But you know what I can do? Is I can take a bowl of mac and cheese and throw some water in it, throw it into the microwave, and then shove it in their heads. And they like it.
Yes.
And so thank God for mac and cheese because that saved my bacon a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because I can't cook, but I know how to pour water and turn on a microwave. Chef's kiss. There you go. Put me on the Food Network. I'm just saying mac and cheese has saved my bacon more than once.
Favorite Thanksgiving side? Quickly, what do you got?
Stuffing. Not even close. Stuffing.
Okay.
Yeah.
To me, it's roasted Brussels sprouts. I'm incredibly high on Brussels sprouts relative to ADP. Relative to ADP, I couldn't be higher on Brussels sprouts.
No. But stuffing has to be crispy, by the way. It can't be soft. It has to be like crunchy. Crunchy stuffing.
That's the smartest thing you've said all day. Let's see if we can get some other smart things out of you. Waiver wire quarterbacks. Let's start off with the immortal Marcus Mariota. Still, biggest gap between real life and fantasy production for this guy. Keeps producing.
Yeah, he does. Tough matchup with my Commanders, obviously, but at least 17 fantasy points in 5 of 7. The rushing keeps his floor high. 40 rushing yards or a rushing touchdown in each of the last, in 5 of the last 7 games where he scored at least 17 fantasy points. Again, last week, QB 14. That's basically what he is. He's a mid-tier guy there. So some other quarterbacks here, because I know we're running short on time. We talked about Ryan Tannehill. He gets Cincinnati, right? Ryan Tannehill has had, in the 2 games since he's come back, 19 fantasy points as teams continue to stack the box against Derrick Henry. That opens up play action for Tannehill, who is accurate. And again, the emergence of Treylon Burks, Austin Hooper as well, nice pass-catching tight end. All of a sudden, the Titans' passing offense starting to, show some signs of life. I think they play in Cincinnati. They're going to have to throw to keep up with the Bengals.
Yeah, I think the emergence of Treylon Burks as well, because they didn't have NFL-level receivers for a stretch there. But now you've got Treylon Burks, Robert Woods. These are NFL receivers. The emergence of my man, Russell Westbrook-Ikine as well, that helps too. So I think Tannehill is certainly viable against the banged-up secondary. What do you think of Jacoby Brissett? And also, what do you think of Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, what do I think about Deshaun Watson is a very loaded question. I will talk about what I think of Deshaun Watson purely from a fantasy football point of view. And from a purely fantasy football point of view, I think Deshaun Watson, if you are quarterback needy, is probably worth grabbing and stashing, right? He's expected to return in Week 13 against Houston, so this is the last week of Jacoby Brissett. If you need somebody this week, they play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week. It's not a defense that really scares you so much. Last 3 games, he's averaged over 20 fantasy points per game. Jacoby Brissett, maybe a last hurrah for him because he knows Watson is coming. And I do think Watson, if you're looking for somebody to stash down the stretch, he becomes kind of interesting. He's available in over 52% of Yahoo leagues. It's a little nervous, right? Because Watson hasn't played in almost 2 years. But of the guys out there, if you're desperate for a quarterback for the rest of the way, he's somebody that is certainly interesting. And finally, Taylor Heineke.
What a surprise.
My guy, Taylor Heineke. Look, over the last...
coda.
Over the last 3 games, Taylor Heineke is averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. He's had 2 different games with over 20 points. Again, look, he didn't have the great game against Houston because he didn't need to because they got the pick 6. But against Atlanta, he's had success against Atlanta in the past. So, yeah, Taylor Heineke. You know, he's a mid-tier QB2.
I like it, and you're not afraid of that matchup against Atlanta.
You certainly are not.
Yeah, it might be a little bit of a shootout. The suddenly relevant Washington Commanders, 6-5, plus 150 to make the playoffs.
Plus 1. I'm taking that bet at BetMGM, especially when I use the promo code Barry because I'm a company man. All right, listen, Jay Croucher, we are back tomorrow. It's Love Hate Day tomorrow. It is closing time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay Croucher, I am Matthew Barry. Thank you to everyone for watching. Go to Denny Carter and look at his YouTube page, and peace out.